So my name is Keeley. I am the Vice President of the Southern California Horticultural Society. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I've been coming to these dinners for a long time, and I think this is a record in terms of the number of people. A testament to you guys supporting the people you love, and for us having the wisdom to pick some really great awardees. So, so if you look at the poster that's out there that lists all the horticulturists of the year, you will see, I think 1963 was the first dinner that we ever had, and it was to celebrate Dr. Mildred Mathias when she won the award. Allison is the assistant director of the Mildred E. Mathias Garden at UCLA, so she's a little prejudiced. And Mildred's birthday was yesterday, so anyway, she was a peach. We've been having a lot of these dinners and honoring a lot of people, and tonight we have 2 awards for the first time. We have our SCHS Pathmaker Award, which is to honor someone who is forging new paths in horticulture and shows much promise for the future, and that's that award. The Horticulturist of the Year is to honor, it's kind of like a lifetime achievement. I got it at 47, so I'd hate to say that was my lifetime achievement. But generally it's for a body of work that you've done over many, many years. So we have 2 wonderful awards now to celebrate people. After we celebrate Catherine, I'm going to come back and tell you about the Horticulturists of the Year that are with us tonight and tell you some history on that. So before, what am I forgetting? I wanted to thank April Curtis, who did all of the arrangements for the table, and also the beautiful bouquets that are out front. I think, is there a big one by here? Anyway, they're just gorgeous, and she just has a touch with arranging flowers, and we really appreciate it. And we didn't do a little system with a, like pick a number or something, but I guess we can do that. But somebody at your table should take the centerpiece home and enjoy it. And if you have any questions about the plants that are in it, ask April. And then I also want to acknowledge that this is a wonderful night of us celebrating the people in our community, both the upcoming and established horticulturists. And in the past, I'm going to say it, we have produced a very tacky little plaque for our winners. I have always regretted that they spelled the name of the organization wrong on mine. So, however, I'm really happy to have gotten it, and I'm happy for that plaque. But I want to tell you about our new awards. So this is something really special we've done this year. Not only do we have a new award, but we have new awards to give our awardees. And if I can find this, okay, here we go. So Marie kindly wrote something about this. And did everybody get to see them? They're up on the table here. So I hope that you did get to see them. And after the dinner, if you're not claiming your silent auction stuff, you can go to the awardees and take a look at their award, because they're beautiful. So the awards that we present this evening are True Handmade Treasures, created by Kristen Gara, design director at Sulip in Westlake Village. Each certificate is hand-lettered and adorned with pressed flowers that bring the spirit of the garden to life. Together, they embody the artistry and beauty of the horticultural world that we are here to celebrate. So, and I want to thank Marie Astrid Gonzalez for spearheading the making of these new awards, which are really quite extraordinary. What am I forgetting before I turn it over to Carol? So Carol Aronson is co-president of the organization, and she's going to come up and tell you a little bit about the new award, the Pathmaker Award, and also turn it over to Catherine for her presentation.
Thank you. Okay, well, it's really great to see so many people here, and we are hoping that some of you will join SoCal Hort, because because we have wonderful meetings once a month. It's 6 months worth of Zooms and 6 months worth of live, and it's alternating. So extremely happy to see so many people here. And just a little background on the Pathmaker Award. It is a new award for this year. And over the many years that the Society's been doing this, we've been honoring, as we said, sort of a Lifetime Achievement Award. And there's been some really incredible people getting this award. And the room is actually full of them. I don't know if anybody, can we stand up who's already a hottie here?
At the end, when the slide goes up with the winners of the silent auction, we need all of the past Horticulturist of the Year award winners, including the Keeleys, to come up and stand in front of the screen because the director wants to get a picture.
All right. Okay, so don't leave without getting into that picture. All right. So we also wanted to recognize that there are a number of really talented people in Southern California that are doing really innovative things in horticulture. And we're not talking about people that had a great idea and they're still in grad school or whatever. We're talking about people that have put a lot of hours and years into horticulture, but they're still, say, mid-career, and they have a lot to offer still. And so that's what's really exciting is, what are these innovative people going to do next? And so our very first Pathmaker awardee is Catherine Pacarduni. I'm not going to say a lot about her because she's got a very nice presentation that will tell you a lot about her talents. But I will say that on my committee of Pathmakers, which is Marty, Lily, and Richard, thank you people for helping me solidify all this. It was unanimous. Catherine was the one. So welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel so special. There I am. I'm just going to make sure this works. I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to myself and how I got into the field of horticulture. I didn't go to schooling for any work in horticulture, environmental sciences, ecology, anything like that. I didn't really have a real strong sense of what I wanted to do when I did go to college, so I spent a lot of time just exploring different things, ended up with an English degree, a minor in anthropology. I took French classes, I took art history. But I left there without still a clear sense of direction. My passion, however, had always been animals. My mother was an animal trainer and had a degree in animal behavior. We grew up with birds and dogs and chickens and cats and tortoises and lizards and salamanders, and the house was always full of animals, and that was what was my calling, was caring for these animals. And so 2 particular species kind of paved the way for me to go into this realm of ecological horticulture, as I like to think of it. And those were my chickens and my dogs. So we used to call our chickens piranha of the land. I don't even know if that's a biologically accurate analogy, but you get the sense of they just eat everything in sight. If it's green, it's gone. And so we had chickens for years. We had up to 8 at once. And so our backyard had lots of trees with foliage on top and then nothing on below, it was just dirt. And so every year when birds would nest in the trees, the baby birds would fledge the nest, they'd get too big for the nest, they'd hop out of the nest, and normally they'd have like a week or 2 to learn how to fly from the ground up. But then, what do you think happened when these beautiful beasts got released into the yard? Unfortunately, they would go and kill these baby birds. And so this was a year, like a springtime, summertime thing of these dogs killing birds in the yard or baby possums and other kinds of wildlife. And I had one moment in particular when I was holding a baby bird in my hand and it was dying in my hand, that I had a really strong emotional reaction, and I really understood that the ecosystem of our backyard was deeply unbalanced. And if I wanted to care for animals, that had to extend beyond domesticated animals, and it had to extend to the greater world of wildlife and all the other life forms we shared this planet with. And so luckily I had these dogs, and they were all high-powered dogs who needed lots and lots and lots of hours of hiking and being out in nature to expend their extra energy, which meant that I was spending tons of hours in Griffith Park, on the trails, surrounded by native plants, in the silence, breathing the air, and really kind of imbibing this sense of nature. And so at the same time that I was doing this and exploring this, even though I didn't have a sense of what native plants were or anything like that, at the same time the whole xeriscaping movement was starting to come into play. People were thinking about drought, and we ended up having this book on the right-hand side, Landscaping. I've never seen this book anywhere else. Does anyone know this book? Like a handful of people, but it's not like one of the ones that's like in the bookstores, in the native plant bookstores that often, and it was just materialized in our house. Maybe my mom bought it, I don't know. But it happened to be there, and I was just absorbed in reading the plant profiles, and I was so excited about this idea of gardening with plants that were going to be supporting the wildlife and helping build habitat and supporting these other life forms that I was inadvertently like murdering with my pets every year. And at the same time that happened, I was also trying to keep up on my English lit and all that stuff. And my beautiful dog, who's never touched any of my books in the entirety of my career in English schooling, tore up one of my English literature books, completely shredded it, as if to say, those days are done. This is what you need to be studying now. And so I did, and the resources on the back of this book pointed me to Theodore Payne, pointed me to the Las Politas website. I was obsessed with this information. I found myself absorbing so much just that way, but also I went to Theodore Payne for the first time during their fall sale, which was brave. That was the first introduction to Theodore Payne was for that big sale. And I got my first set of plants, and like a really good designer, I got one of everything. And I did it in the most hodgepodge manner, but it was my opportunity to learn about these plants and learn what works, what doesn't work, what they look like, how they behave. It was a little bit of a tangled mess of a wildlife habitat, but guess what? The birds stopped dying. And I started to see so much life come into the yard. I saw bugs I'd never seen before. I felt like this veil that was in front of me was lifted, and I was like in this portal of a new dimension of like, oh my God, these things exist, these life forms exist that I never knew, and you just plant the right plants and they come and it's amazing. And I wanted to do it for other people, so I coaxed my sister into letting me do it in her yard. And so I was starting to create habitats for anyone who would let me, family and friends, and a couple of those people are here today. But I really wanted to be immersed in it in a different way, in a way that I knew was going to really elevate me and make my impact higher. So I wanted to work at Theodore Payne. So I applied to work to Theodore Payne. Did you think I get it? Did I get the job? No. So then I doubled down on gardening, doing my own like garden design business, again, getting improved. And then I applied again when they had an opening. Did you think I got it? No, I didn't get it. And then I did more gardens, and I was still getting more expertise and learning and experience. And then a third time they had an opening for the sales yard. And I said, if I don't get it this time, I'm not applying again. What do you think?
You got it.
So for the next 4 years, I got to work at Theodore Payne, which to me was like college. So 4 years of college, even though I spent longer than 4 years at Cal State LA, we'll just say 4 years of college. We have 4 years here at Theodore Payne. It was the most incredible education, not just because you have to read those inventories and you have to get to know all the plants in the sales yard and care for them and all that, but also you're surrounded by colleagues who all had so much more experience than you, and you get to absorb their knowledge. You're also able to help other people, which then they also give you feedback about stuff that's worked or not worked. You get to learn from other designers, and so I got to meet a lot of designers and see their work. And so it really helped me, because not only did my impact improve or expand, let's say, because now I can help tons of people with their gardens, but I also got to continue doing my own gardens on the side, to this point that I got to have even one of my gardens on the garden tour for this particular client. So it really helped me level up my skills in that kind of a field as well. But I was thinking so much and having Griffith Park be such a big part of my kind of experience and my love of nature, I also was very focused on habitat restoration and wanting to grow native plants for Griffith Park, for habitat, from locally sourced seeds. Conservation was a big part of my ethos, let's say. And so there was a particular nursery in Griffith Park called Commonwealth Nursery. And I used to hike with the dogs and look down in there. And I used to say, I wish I could grow native plants from local seeds in this nursery in Griffith Park and plant them back in the park. And I remember emailing even Marion Dodge, who's here today, emailing Marion Dodge with Friends of Griffith Park and being like, is anyone doing this at this nursery? And I found out that there was a nonprofit that got permission to start to catalyze native plant production on this nursery, to kind of pilot a program to see what that might look like. And so I got connected with a nonprofit called Grown in LA, and we took a section of those old derelict terraces, and we started a native plant program there for 2 years. We grew 6,000 plants in 2 years and started to supply them to projects in the park. So we got to partner with the Friends of Griffith Park on habitat restoration. We planted in Ferndale, we planted in the bird sanctuary, and we even supplied plants directly to Rec and Parks maintenance staff who was doing plantings in the park. So we were starting to get a lot of excitement around this idea of local source plants, planting in the park, doing habitat restoration at a place that hadn't seen plant production at all at that site since the 70s. So after that program ended, I was hired by a neighboring nonprofit, which is the LA Parks Foundation, and they kind of wanted to do the same thing, start up a native plant nursery in the backyard of their headquarters and start to do kind of native plant oriented installations in parks. And so we kind of set up this really cool backyard nursery with a capacity of about 1,000 plants. And we got to do a pilot project. Most noteworthy was the Betty Davis microforest. So the Betty Davis microforest was the first attempt at modifying and adapting the Miyawaki method of afforestation, which was pioneered in Japan, for a Mediterranean climate using an LA-based plant palette. And so we made modifications and adaptations, and this project itself is helping to inform, based on what worked, what didn't work, it's helping to inform future projects moving forward. So this was it. I don't know if you saw it. That was the 2 months after planting. This is 11 months after planting. And this is it zoomed back a little bit, and that's 4 years total. And so if you ever do want to visit this site, I recommend going between like February and June, because that's when it looks the most lush. I will say it does have a pretty pronounced summer dormancy period, but otherwise it's been really, really helpful as a pilot to help inform future projects. So by this time I got pretty known for starting up nurseries from scratch and heard about a really great opportunity that the partners of the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing project had put out. And so they were looking for a nursery manager to develop a brand new nursery close to the project here. The project's in Agoura Hills, but they were looking to create a nursery from scratch in Calabasas to grow all the plants to plant on the wildlife crossing, which is being constructed over the 101 as we speak, probably. And so for the next 2 years, I developed a native plant nursery from scratch, developed all the infrastructure and coordinated the construction so that we had a fully functional nursery, hiked the Santa Monica Mountains, collected over millions locally sourced seeds, collected billions of spores of mycorrhizal fungi that was going to be used as part of an inoculant, trained 2 amazing staff people, and grew the first 10,000 plants for that project. At the same time as all that was happening, I developed a website to help people, a free resource guide for people who wanted to be doing microforests themselves. They got inspired by the Betty Davis project, and I was getting inundated with questions. And so I decided to create a website that would help field some of those questions. Also partially lazy on my part because I didn't want to keep typing answers. So I thought this was a better option. And then we also got this really great opportunity to take that microforest concept to a much bigger scale. So we got an opportunity to do a 10 times size microforest, which is kind of silly because it's a microforest, at Ascot Hills Park. And so we partnered with Northeast Trees Nursery, or Northeast Trees nonprofit, and used their nursery and staff to help grow the plants for the microforest. We were able to finance an extension to their nursery so that they could increase growing capacity there for their own projects. And then partnered with Loyola Marymount students and faculty and staff for the planting, for volunteerism, and also for student research. So we had 850 plants planted on this square plot. That was shortly after planting. This is a year later. This is 18 months in the middle of summer. And this has only been watered 5 times since planting, and not at all during the summer, or not at all during 2025. And so really cool, interesting facts about this particular site is that, or the project itself, it's supporting 50% more biodiversity than an adjacent control plot, according to the research that students at Loyola Marymount have been doing. It's sequestering 1 ton of carbon a year at 18 months of age, and it's projected to sequester up to 55 tons a year after it's 20 years old. We also got to do a smaller one, something similar at the first LAUSD school. This is at Mid-City Prescott. We did in collaboration with Sugi Project, the Angelinos for Green Schools, and the school itself. And those are the beautiful plants, creating habitat, supporting biodiversity. We already had some students doing some seed collecting and some data gathering. And so after the 2 years of the wildlife crossing and doing those projects concurrently, it occurred to me that I needed to dedicate my time to running my business full-time, which is called Seed to Landscape. And so I did leave the Wildlife Crossing project, passed the baton on to my 2 incredible staff people. I had gotten it to a really, really solid place, I felt. And so have been doing projects closer to home since then. And that was since February of 2024. So I've been doing habitat restoration projects on conservation easements, helping with native plant installations, even small pollinator gardens in public spaces, like this small garden we did with Friends of Griffith Park and in partnership with the artists of Studio Tuto. And then I've been doing consulting. I assisted the Tataviam Land Conservancy with the start of their new nursery in Pacoima. I was recently hired by UCLA's Stunt Ranch to help them start up a small restoration nursery at their reserve in the Santa Monica Mountains and help with various other kinds of native plant opportunities. And then one last project highlight I will mention, we just did another microforest here in West LA College, and we have the president of the college that was here today. It was a 3,000 square foot microforest with an additional planting. We had 120 students coming, not students, 150 students, community members, parents, staff that came to the planting. This was just in March. And so, and then we're starting to grow in only at 5 months of age. We have a microforest behind the statue, various coastal sage scrub plantings in front of it, and then a wildflower meadow as well. So 3 different habitat types. And the really cool thing about this, again, is that we're localizing the plant production. So we're looping in Nature Nexus. This is a Northeast Trees Nature Nexus and college collaboration. Nature Nexus Institute grew all the plants for this. We were able, again, to finance an upgrade to their nursery through this project. They have a very robust workforce development program, and so they're also working on site to do the maintenance and stewardship and do the horticulture related to it. And then there's also a conservation studies course at that college that can now use this site for ecological learning. So the reason why I bring this part up is I'm always trying to find ways to increase impact. It's one thing to create a garden that one homeowner will enjoy. It's quite another to create a space that students will be able to come through and hopefully get inspired to follow in some kind of either environmental work, horticultural work, nursery work, etc. So I had the benefit of having such supportive parents that always encouraged me, never pushed me to, decide on what you need to do. And, I didn't have the same kinds of pressures that I think students coming up in the world now have. College 20 years ago was so much more affordable than college is now. So if we have these spaces where not only is nature accessible where you're at in the middle of the city versus nature always being out there, if we bring nature here, we can inspire people to consider career pathways in these natural, environmental, and horticultural fields. And the sooner we do that, whether that's in elementary school, high school, or college, the better. Better for the world and also better for people. So if anybody wants to keep in touch, that's my email. My name is Catherine. It's Catherine@ctolandscape.com. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to SoCal Hort for honoring me today and recognizing something in me. I can assure you that this is only the beginning for me. I'm just getting warmed up. And thank you.
But I'm Laura Baer, co-president with Carol here. And we have these beautiful awards for you. Yep. So, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. Looking forward to seeing what you do next. And thank you, Carol, for spearheading this award and for everything else. And I think we're going to hand it back over to Lily now.
I was there when Catherine was making those applications at the open. Why aren't they hiring this woman? And she brought the dog with her, the white one. Anyway, it was good to work with you there. And you've moved on to amazing things. So it is now time to honor our Horticulturists of the Year, Melanie, Baer, Keeley, and Jon E. I gave you a little bit of information before about the history of the award, so I won't go into it. But I would like the awardees, past awardees, to stand up again. I'd like to give you names. So if you could get up off your chairs again, and then everybody would know who you are. So, all around the right is Kathy Musial from the Huntington, Carol Bornstein, Jon E, Mike Evans from Trio Vibration, and you guys soon. You have to come up and get your picture, not yet. So, I'm doing double duty here, so my next, what? Oh, and you. It is one of the great honors, is it not? It really is. So, for those of us in Southern California, this is pretty hot. Okay, so I'm trying to find something else that I want to, oh, it's in my pictures, hold on a second. So my next job is I'm going to be the first of 4 presenters talking about the Keeleys. So, but I'm tired, so I keep going to the wrong thing here. Oh, good picture. Okay, so where in the heck is it? There we go. And no, it's not under, it's in the photographs. I'm tired. So it was the silent auction and the humidity, my goodness. Okay, where is the picture of you guys? And okay, so I had never seen this picture before. And I can't find what I'm looking for. I'm gonna wing it. So I had never seen, oh, not this picture. So this is the first picture. Wait till you see the next picture. This is a picture on the left. The little blonde kid is Jon with his sister. It looks like he's about 2.5 or 3. And then over on the right is Melanie with her brother, who I think is here tonight, right? Yeah. And a dog. And I don't know, you look like you said 1963 on it, but that would make you 5 or 6 in that picture. And I don't think you're that old in that picture. Yeah, you're about 3 or something. Anyway, cute little horticulturist to be. And I do want to say that both Melanie and Jon are Southern Californians, born and bred. And they're still living in the uppermost part of Southern California, which is Three Rivers, at the south end of Sequoia and Kings Canyon, which I was assured is still Southern California. Jon grew up in San Diego County, Melanie in Glendale, so they are local guys. So it's not surprising that they developed a love for our native plants. I'm supposed to do this, let's see. So this was the picture I had not seen. When they were young. So their daughter Katie posted this picture on her Facebook feed on their 25th anniversary. And I'm going to paraphrase what she said because I can't find it. But what she said basically was, Melanie was the manager of Theodore Payne in the late 80s and early 90s. And I think we met something like in the 80s or 70s or something. She said through my dad's nursery. So she was up there at Theodore Payne, and as the story goes, the guy in the picture, who was a young botanist, went into Theodore Payne Foundation to get a couple plants, and he encountered a pretty young horticulturist. And oops, he left a couple of his plants there, thus necessitating another call to the pretty young horticulturist. And the rest is history. So that was on, so Melanie told me this picture was from 1989, and they were married in 1990. So somewhere in this time period, somewhere in this time period they did this. So they created two amazing children, both of whom studied natural resource conservation. Katie works in Michigan, running an award-winning, thing that does
GIS specialist.
She's a GIS specialist, and for natural resources for the state of Michigan. And her entity, which I'm just like, I don't know what to call it, has been award-winning, and she's very accomplished. Daniel, the little redhead, who grew to be about 6'9", is climbing 200-foot tall trees. He is trying to help save trees that have diseases and pests in them, insects and diseases, and find out what's going on. And if I was his mother, I don't know how you sleep. Okay? He's teaching other young men how to do this, and women, I assume. But Daniel is also, and he's in California doing this work.
He's all over the Southwest and the Pacific Northwest.
So Melanie says he's all over the Southwest and the Pacific Northwest, climbing 200-foot trees. They grew up to be pretty cool, and I think they're still pretty close, actually. And the next picture, I have to do this. I'm used to Alexis doing this for me. The next picture is sometime in this period, I started a publication called the Southern California Gardener, and I roped Melanie into doing, it was 6 times a year, it was bi-monthly. I roped her into doing a column called Natives in the Landscape. And I have to say that I learned all the basics of native plant horticulture from Melanie, asking her questions, editing the stuff she would turn in. She also illustrated them. And so over a period of 10 years, 9.5, 10 years, at 6 a year, that comes out to about 55 columns that she wrote, except for the month that she wrote this, and maybe one other one. This was a cover story called The Tree Oaks of Southern California. It was comprehensive. You just see a couple pages here. It covered everything from how to grow them from seed to how to take care of them to resources. It was a marvelous, marvelous piece of work. And it won an award in writing for a national award from the Garden Writers Association, and very, very well deserved. And I don't know why you did not do these illustrations. Allison did them. And all I can think of was maybe you just had Daniel or something. You know, it was somewhere around that time, because she illustrated everything else that she did for the publication. But it was really a remarkable piece of work, and I want to thank you for being my native plant mentor. You know, and then I ended up back at Theodore Payne, you know, the Theater of Payne. I ended up there. So, so that's what Melanie was doing. And did I go backwards? And Then they are growing up. When I first saw this small, I didn't realize that's a half dome in the back. It's just empty. But they are growing up and they're still smiling. And in the meantime, so Melanie is doing her work. She has also gone to work when they moved up to Three Rivers to work for the National Park Service as a restoration horticulturist. And Jon is doing his academic work. And if you don't know Jon, he has produced something like 400 scientific papers by now, and also was the lead editor of this very, very useful book that came out at a time when there were very few things to be published about this. So really remarkable work on both of their parts. And then when Melanie retired from the National Park Service, just in time, boy, she had been growing plants, but opened up a full-time nursery called Alta Vista Plants, native plant nursery, up in Three Rivers. And this is a remarkably wonderful story. It took her 7 months to get those beautiful roots on those manzanita cuttings. And then you can see them all potted up in 4-inch pots. And there's the beautiful plant itself, a white leaf manzanita which grows up in their area. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And she's growing lots of other things too. And there's Jon, and what I love about Jon, besides loving Jon, is that even though he's this highfalutin academic and does all that stuff, he has been the go-to person for the media in the last couple of decades, radio mainly and print, to talk about fire and fire systems and trying to set the record straight on the truth about fires in Southern California and how they're different than Northern California, and educating people in smart fire practices and what to expect from the plants out there, and how wonderful these plants are that they can rebound. And I think that that's a really important message. And this is a picture of Jon giving a talk to the Alta Vista chapter of the California Native Plant Society, and by the way, Melanie has been very active in that, after the fires in Sequoia, and you can see the burned hills behind him. And what's really wonderful about Jon is he's got all this knowledge and can write all this scientific stuff, but he knows how to distill it down to a level that anybody in this room could understand. And I think that's really a remarkable feat for a teacher. He's made a great impression on people. So, and I think I have one more slide. Oh, don't I? Is that the last one? Oh, there they are, okay. So, aren't they funny? I love that goofy one up at the top left. And what Alexis pointed out to me is they're holding margaritas. And I 86'd one picture that Melanie had sent. It was a picture of the two of them in front of a bridge, and she's holding a glass of wine. And I said something, and so we didn't use that one, but the margarita picture made it in there. They look so darn happy. Congratulations to you both. You really deserve this honor, and I'm really proud to have you. On the board of the Hort Society for a while too. She's done a lot. So. I'm going to introduce the next speakers, which are Jody Lyle and Eric Oberg, and they're going to tell you a little bit. Jody's going to do, I'm so tired. Jody's going to do Jon, and Eric's going to talk a little bit about Melanie.
Good evening. So again, my name is Jody Lyle, and my husband is Eric Oberg, and we are thrilled to be here in honor of Jon and Melanie Keeley, who we've known as work colleagues and friends for more than 25 years. I'm going to speak first, as Lily was saying, on behalf of Jon, and then I'll turn it over to Eric to talk about Melanie. I met Jon back in the late 1990s when he became the USGS field station lead at Sequoia National Park. And at the time, I had just gotten a job with the National Park Service at Sequoia National Park too, as their fire information officer. So it was my job to explain the complex and often controversial world of fire management. As I looked for opportunities to learn more about this, I quickly discovered Jon and his kindness, his curiosity, his willingness to share information, and of course, his enormous expertise with chaparral ecosystems, not just here in California, but around the world. Back then, Jon was already a prolific writer of published papers that meticulously recorded his field work, observations, and data analysis about chaparral plant communities and their relationship with fire. He deeply influenced my understanding of low elevation fire ecology and was always available to help me translate these important findings to the general public and the media. So now fast forward almost 2 decades, Eric and I are back in Southern California after Park Service careers that took us to Washington, D.C. and Yellowstone and back. And today I'm the superintendent of Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. One of the really most amazing parts of this new assignment is that I'm back in a place that benefits greatly from Jon's expertise. As a true independent scientist, Jon provides valuable information for public land managers like me to use in creating policy and making on-the-ground decisions. So on a macro level in California, Jon has shaped the way that numerous federal, state, and local agencies think about and protect Mediterranean ecosystems. But then on a micro level at the Santa Monica Mountains, where I work, his work has had a huge impact on our botany, our restoration, and our wildland fire programs. I'll give you one recent example. Our park happens to just now be completing a major update to our fire management plan, and agencies do this maybe every 5 to 10 years. Yesterday, while I was preparing this talk, I thought it would be fun to do a quick search on Jon's name in our new fire management plan document. And I was amazed, and yet not surprised, to find that his scientific papers are cited 42 times. So Jon, thank you for your dedicated federal service, and thank you to the Southern California Horticultural Society for honoring Jon and his work. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So go ahead and pull up the slides.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Eric Oberg, and I'm delighted to be here this evening and honor our good friends, Jon and Melanie. As Jody mentioned, we both spent our careers with the National Park Service, and most recently, I'm now the principal of Acorn Design Studios in Thousand Oaks, doing landscape design for clients interested in California native plants, which I think you will see from the slides I'm about to present. I got the idea from working with Melanie many years ago. So way back in 2000, when I was an education ranger, I asked Melanie to help me create a 4-day residential environmental education program for 7th graders. 7th graders from South Central Los Angeles and the small communities in the Central Valley of California. To my total astonishment, she said yes. We created that Sequoia for Youth program, having students follow their water supply from the Los Angeles Basin and from the Central Valley, all the way up to the snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas. And then we added a service project for those 7th grade students to give something back to the park for that intensive 4-day experience that they got as a part of that program. The students worked with Melanie. Oh, sorry. They worked with Melanie in the nursery. They created the Foothills Native Plant Garden, so if you ever visit the headquarters of Sequoia National Park, you can still see the native plant garden that we created with those 7th grade students. And the students also did restoration plantings all throughout the park foothills. Next slide. Oh, sorry, that's right. So there she is in Melanie's native habitat, working with the 7th graders. Students got hands-on experiences in the park, potting, planting, pruning, weeding, It was a particularly special experience to watch the parent chaperones, many of whom, as anybody that has kids in this room might imagine, have trouble connecting with their 7th graders. Those parent chaperones really got to make great connections with the kids on those field trips. And the kids also got to understand that really special magic that I think a lot of us can appreciate, that sense of delayed gratification of watching plants grow. Was really, really a moving experience for those kids. There's another look at the native plant garden out in front of the headquarters being developed over the years, and some of the restoration work that we did in the park. But Melanie also did something really special for those kids, besides all of the service projects. She introduced them to her coworkers, fellow botanists, restoration ecologists, firefighters, each of which in turn explained what their careers were like, sending a message to those young students that if they committed to their education, that they too could also have a very cool, rewarding job helping nature and living in beautiful places. It's hard to explain the impact of that message, especially for the young women students who got to see professional female role models. Over those 8 years that we developed the Sequoia for Youth program, together we reached 700 7th graders from South Central LA and those small communities in the Central Valley. And I don't think I could say it any better than the way the students said it. Thanks to all the caring adults who gave their time and energy to help us learn about agriculture, ecology, and Sequoia National Park. We have shared a journey that we will long remember. Couldn't have said it better. Thanks, Jon and Melanie.
Now I'm going to introduce Greg Rubin. Greg is a landscape designer from Cal-Owned Landscape down in San Diego County, and he is the recipient of the Horticulturist of the Year Award from the San Diego Horticultural Society. So very apropos that you are here, and he's going to talk about both of these duties.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for that nice introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm really honored to be here tonight. And God, I can't get over this venue. I mean, it'd be nice if they had a view, right? Wow! So I'm so honored to be here, guys. Let me get my thing going here. So yeah, you didn't know that Jon was actually a space shuttle pilot too. That's him getting ready in Cape Canaveral, getting ready to go up. No, I just love this sort of postmodern photo of him, and I thought we'd just give it a little energy, so it's vertical. What I want to mention though, guys, before I had the pleasure to know Jon, I knew Melanie. And Bill Enns, who's here tonight, and my brother introduced me to the wonderful world of native plants back around 1986. And it was around that 86, 87 that I met Melanie. And those guys and Melanie had a huge effect on the direction of my life. So at that time I was finishing college, I was an aerospace engineer. So I made the very logical transition to California native landscape contractor and was helped along the way by so many incredible people. Mike Evans, Bill, Melanie, Jan, and a gentleman named Bert Wilson, who owned Las Politas Nursery, and he's gone now, unfortunately, but Bert was pretty amazing. He was a fantastic nurseryman. He was also a 14-year CAL FIRE veteran. And so this idea of fire resistance and native landscapes, it's not an oxymoron, okay? And he'd been beating this stuff into my head since day one. And it was huge because that ended up being kind of my specialty. We've installed over 800 landscapes in Southern California. 25 of those went through major fire events without the loss of a home. A couple got a little damaged, but it was pretty good. It was, when people call you up and say, Ruben, your landscape saved my house, that's a good day, right? So, thank you. And I didn't mean to call attention to myself, but you kind of see where this is going, right? And it started at Theodore Payne all those years ago. Bert really educated him on fire. And it was interesting because Bert had this really cool catalog. I don't know if you guys remember back when. And I used to look at the references. And you know, it was like, everywhere I looked, I see this guy named Jon Keeley. I needed to meet this guy. And Bert held Jon in real reverence, okay? Really respected, because there's so much bad information about natives and fire. You know, natives aren't, chaparral isn't designed to burn. It's designed to burn like your house is designed to burn because you have fire insurance, right? And Jon has been working all his life to dispel these myths. And I've been working from the landscape end because people are vilifying native plants now. And yet, they turn out to be some of the most fire-resistant materials there are if you just add a little water. So again, Jon was really resonating with me. And I eventually met Jon face-to-face through the Chaparral Institute. And one of the cool things I realized is that this exalted figure was just an unpretentious goofball like the rest of us. He's so much fun, and Melanie too. He knows how to have fun. So it was just wonderful meeting Jon. And then later, we actually got to work together on a 4-year research project for the United States Navy, where we found that fire spread could be slowed significantly by hydrated native vegetation. What a concept. It's going to spontaneously burst into flames and burn down your house. And that was significant, okay? And working with Jon, I really got to know him. And I'm just, in the fact that he was married to somebody that was also so important in my career is just serendipity. So, Jon also discovered one of my favorite plants, or maybe not so much discovered, but named it, Archistaphylos rainbowensis. Grows near Fallbrook. Actually grows all over North County, San Diego, hence the name Rainbow, if you know where Rainbow is. And it is a wonderful local native plant. And Jon was responsible for naming it. And I just like, this is in my backyard. I love this plant and I've had it for years. So, that was the results of the Navy study. I won't belabor you with that. Just, you can see the rate of fire spread was a lot less with moisture for both planted natives and thinned chaparral, which there had never been any investigation into that either. So Jon continues to be a huge source of wisdom and genius, and I am just so absolutely thrilled and honored to introduce you guys. Thank you very much. You had a huge effect on my life.
We're not done yet. I'm a little fried from being out there in the sun. First, Melanie and Jon are going to give presentations. Is that how it's going to work? Okay. So Melanie's going to do hers first, and then Jon. And forward.
This whole night I've been thinking, should I chuck the written talk and speak extemporaneously, or should I fit within my 7 minutes
and get through all the material. So I am going to read part of this and ad lib as we go. So who knows how it's going to turn out. First off, thank you all for coming from far and wide to support me in this and to show your interest in my particular interest and passion. I better start my clock, sorry. I need to know when 7 minutes are up. Okay. So while personally I've always had a lot of satisfaction with the work I do, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done over 45 years. I can't believe I'm talking in decades like that. I am truly surprised to be receiving this award. And I'm delighted and deeply honored because I was very involved in this group for many years in the 80s and 90s primarily. And to be recognized by the Southern California Horticulture and my peers really means a lot to me. You know, I know what part of what you know, you're just the cream of the crop when it comes to your own specialties, and I really admire many of you. I'm, old school. I knew Dave Verity and Dr. Matthias and Christopher Osmani. I come from that 80s kind of generation of Southern California horticulturists. I just want to say that this award affirms to me that all the hard work I've done over the years was valued. Sometimes you can't tell, and I really appreciate the honor for that reason. Sometimes, especially as a restoration horticulturist or ecologist, your work is supposed to be invisible. You aren't supposed to be known. It's not supposed to be known that you were even on the land that you're trying to restore. So it's a very weird situation to be in. So to have this attention brought to me in my work, I'm very honored by that you were paying attention and others were paying attention. I actually want to acknowledge once again some of the former Hotties Horticulturist of the Year award winners who especially have focused their professional efforts on California native plants. And so here are the movers and shakers in my particular field. There's some missing. There are so many people that really comprise the native plant oriented horticulturist. But many of these people on this list were foundational in my own career. Not to make you feel old or anything, but as I came to Theodore Payne Foundation, like Catherine, it was the crash course on native plants. And so people like Carol Bornstein, Lily Singer, actually, I learned so much from both of you. John Dorley was a mentor of mine. Those 2 martini lunches were so wonderful. Talking plants and martinis, it's a great combination. So I want to acknowledge that these people were not only mentors to me, but colleagues. And to be in their company and to have my work acknowledged alongside of theirs is something I'm very proud of. I really respect those people, and I'm grateful for them. And not many of you know that back in the 80s, native plants weren't very popular. And so between these people, and I think the Theodore Payne Foundation really made a lot of progress towards getting native plants more mainstream. And I think at the time in the 80s, native plants weren't even considered to be put into landscapes. So it was with the hard work of these people, and including Mike Evans, who developed with his partner in crime, Jeff Bond, the biggest native plant supplier in at least Southern California, if not the state. And if those plants weren't available, none of this forward motion could have happened. So And we'll talk a little bit more about Mike later. But I feel like all of us together made an impact, and with each garden that we planted and each person that we directly connected with, and every landscape that was transformed by natives, we kind of shifted the thinking, so now it's more acceptable and it's more commonplace and more commonly done. So that was a huge step forward. And I think a lot more people today think that that native plant landscapes are not only beautiful, but they're important for their cultural significance and their resource conservation and their role in sustainability and biodiversity. So they support all of these factors and thus are very important. So I appreciate all those former hotties. Thank you so much. Your contributions have really helped to build a foundation that continues to be fortified with people like Catherine. Thank goodness you're stepping in because we're retiring. You know, we're getting tired. I can definitely see that. Now for Jon Keeley, congratulations. If you just look up Jon Keeley's resume, your mind will be blown. And to now have him be Horticulturist of the Year is a real feather in his cap, I can tell you. So that's fantastic. So it's just amazing. I think, Jon Keeley, you're a true testament to what it means to be curious and driven and passionate about your field. And I've learned so much from you. He is a very gentle and patient teacher, fortunately. And he has taught me not just about the plants, but about the importance of lifelong learning, which I certainly appreciate. And your curiosity is contagious. And I look forward to many more years of working along your side. So, it's been 36 years now. And thank you for taking me to all those beautiful Mediterranean, fire-prone winemaking regions. Now, I know I haven't really gone through my slides because they're sort of superfluous, to be honest, to what I'm saying. Wrong way, I guess. Okay, Jon and his native habitat. Thank you, Jon. Okay, so briefly, my employment history. Like Catherine, I learned so much working at the Theodore Payne Foundation, but when I was there, I was the only person except for Luis Guerrero, who was the long-standing propagator there. Just the two of us. I'd go days without seeing another human being. I mean, there were no customers at the time. This was 1985. And shortly after I got there in 85, Jan Busco got hired, and she ended up being my co-manager. She was doing more propagation and I was doing more education. Kind of we split the roles. There was no executive director, nothing like that. So together she and I managed until she left in 1990, and we really complemented each other, I felt. And the time was right, the public was really receptive, and it just snowballed. It was crazy. I think the stature rose during the time we were there. I'd like to think that was because of us, but I don't know. And it became recognized really as a respected source of both native plants and public information on all things related. So when I left in '92, I'm proud to say that the foundation had grown considerably. We had 13 employees by then, and $250,000 in sales, a thriving educational program, substantial membership, and we had, I feel like, developed a real community of supporters that I think are still around today. So I'm proud to have been part of that early growth, and I'm pleased to see the foundation flourishing as it is today. there we are. Some of the people that were on our staff or on our board during the time, the Baer Busco years, I like to think of it. Again, when we were young. I've done so much. I was thinking, Catherine, you're 30 something. I'm 68 now, and there were so many things to go through that have been interesting in my life and my career, and it was very hard to narrow down. But I did have a lot of incredible experiences doing contracting work. It was either while I was working full-time, I'd do these side jobs or weekends, and then sometimes when I was raising small children, I did other jobs. And I think they were so diverse, and I learned so much through the process. I mean, it was wonderful. And I'm already late. Lily, are you gonna throw me off the stage? Okay. So, I'm a firm believer in building on-site restoration nurseries for revegetation projects. So I did about a half dozen of those. I helped a couple retail and wholesale nurseries get started, including El Motivo Growers and Matilaha Nursery. I've written about over 100 publications, thanks to Lily. I didn't even realize I could write until Lily made me. And it became a real passion also, so thank you for that. Wrote for Sunset Magazine, Insignis, and some other academic periodicals. In '99, our family moved to Three Rivers, where Jon took a job with USGS. And then in 2001, I took a job with Sequoia Kings Canyon National Parks in the Division of Natural Resources branch of Vegetation Management, Ecological Restoration and Forestry. And I worked there. I thought I was going to work there briefly and then start a business, but 22 years later, I ended up retiring just 2023. But for 22 years, I have the privilege of working in one of the most awe-inspiring, ecologically diverse regions of the United States. It was a wonderful, very challenging position. I felt good about what I did there, which was to care for, protect, and rehabilitate disturbed wildlands. And it was amazing, every day to get to go up to 7,000 feet and see almost pristine areas that needed a little help was just, for me, a dream come true. It's not for everybody, but it is for me. And again, our goal was to repair the land, disturbed land, however it was disturbed by human intervention or by Mother Nature. We would have to go in and, a lot of planning. It just was so much, but to have a project succeed and to become self-sustaining ecosystems was wonderful and very gratifying. So, and every year, we produce something like 35 to 50,000 plants for restoration, not only in Sequoia and Kings, but also to our sister parks, Yosemite National Park. And we ended up revegetating sites such as Mariposa Grove in Yosemite and Tuolumne Meadows. And if I look at it in total, probably we grew and by we, I mean the people in that table there. These were many of my volunteers at Sequoia National Park. Would you stand up and take some applause, please? These are wonderful, selfless people that have given so much to the national parks. And they worked with me, some of them for, how long, Denise?
15 years.
15 years she worked with me. So,
a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. So all told, we probably grew 750 to 1 million plants to put into the ground to restore the damaged areas of the park. So it was definitely a highlight in my life and career. And it was the culmination of a lot of experiences, professional experiences. I'm really proud of my botanical spawn. I'm not sure how to put that, but I worked with so many employees, not that way, so many young botanists, hopeful botanists that went into the field because they had a good experience working with me in the park.
But they did not spawn.
They did not spawn. So anyway, I'm very proud of who came, who developed as a result of our interactions. And like Lily said, I have now retired. I retired at the end of 23 from the Park Service, and then I started a little local native plant nursery so that people in my neighborhood could plant natives instead of bird of paradise brought from Southern California. You know, I really, through time, it felt like it's very important to have these little local nurseries. You know, they don't maybe seem that significant. They don't seem that significant, but what they do is they support the local wild habitat and the local wildlife. So that's what I'm doing now. And again, I want to tell you how much I appreciate this award from you particular people. It really means something to me. And I just wanted to say, Mike Evans, could you say a word about your new nonprofit? No? Just a few minutes, because you have contributed so much, and I know it's not going to stop with your Nursery Tree of Life closing. So what do you want to next?
Well, I'll only answer that because of my deep respect for you, because you've asked for it. This night is about you and John. But thank you. CalNativeHort.org is a brand new nonprofit, which I hope will be a place where all these small nurseries, which you've just talked about and have touched my heart, will have community. CalNativeHort.org.
Go Melanie!
Thank you, Melanie, for the kind words, and Greg and Eric and Jody and Lily. It's very nice to hear such kind words. In science, we don't often get kind words from people. I thank the Southern California Horticultural Society for this award. It was very unexpected, and I very much appreciate it. When I first heard about this, I was told I had 8 minutes to describe my entire career. I'm a little disappointed to find out it actually wasn't that hard. My career in botany began when I was a student at San Diego State. And I remember standing on the back porch of my home in Bonita watching the 100,000 acre Laguna fire burn across the landscape, consuming a lot of the chaparral vegetation. But I was particularly surprised in the spring to see this prolific display of wildflowers that came up. And I was so taken by this, I started reading more and more about the post-fire recovery in chaparral, and learned a great deal about the fact that these plants come from seeds that stay dormant in the soil for decades, even a century or more, and then are triggered to germinate by the fire. And I was also intrigued by one of the comments I read by John Thomas, a botanist at the Cal Academy in Golden Gate Park, said that this, what he called the floral phoenix arising after a fire, so spectacular that it's a wonder that botanists don't become arsons on occasion. I did my master's degree at San Diego State in ecology, studying post-fire vegetation. And my mentor at the time said, if you want to go on in graduate school, you need to go to the East, because you can't be a credible ecologist if you haven't studied in the East. So I ended up working on a PhD at the University of Georgia, well known not just because of its football championships, but because of its Institute of Ecology. And the first summer I was in Georgia, I remember running around in the coastal plain where it was 90 degrees and 90% humidity and lots of mosquitoes. And I decided I don't think I want to do a field study. And instead I ended up doing a lab study where I was focused on the root metabolism of trees that grow in swamps compared with trees in the uplands. And after 4 years of working on that project, I ended up moving back to California as a professor of biology at Occidental College. And our job was not just teaching, but to combine teaching and research. And in fact, that was always my model about how to teach, is you combine teaching and research together. And the closest thing they could find to a swamp in California were vernal pools, which used to be very common throughout the state. But they have aquatic plants, and they have a lot of interesting questions. Oh, is that too far? Is that just about right? One of the things that was particularly surprising in these pools is there is this plant, the little plant there in the middle. It's called Isoetes. It's a fern ally, very primitive plant, grows in these vernal pools. And one of the things that was really surprising is to discover that it had a photosynthetic pathway known as CAM photosynthesis, which is only, prior to that, found in desert succulents as a means of surviving drought. And so this was a fascinating discovery that there was a plant growing underwater that had the same pathway as desert succulents. And for about 10 years, the National Science Foundation funded our research on this plant to try and discover why this pathway was found in such a different environment. And so along with my students at Occidental, one of whom is here tonight, Dr. Sweda, studied the metabolism of these plants, and I actually heard from another student who worked on this project just the other day congratulating me on being a horticulturalist because he said no one else could grow Isoetes the way I could cultivate it, but he didn't say that nobody would want to grow Isoetes either. In addition to working on the pools, I ended up getting a Guggenheim Fellowship that gave me 2 years to travel around the world looking for interesting plants. And one of them was a plant related to Isoetes that grows in the highlands of the Andes above, or in Peru. And you have to go up to as you can see from on the left there, 4,800 meters, in other words, about 16,000 feet to get into that area. And that's where I discovered on the right, the Peruvian sense of humor. This is a compressed air company with a billboard that said "Falta aire," which means "Are you lacking air?" What we found in these areas in the Andes was this plant related to Isoetes that was not an aquatic. It lived actually in peat bogs. And the picture on the left shows a cross-section of this plant. 95% of the biomass is underground. And what was spectacular was the leaves themselves, the stomatal pores were sealed shut. All of its carbon appeared to, it must be coming from the sediment itself. And this was a very unusual find, so much so that the prestigious British journal Nature published a cover photo. Now, despite all of these diversions, my longtime interest always was in chaparral and post-fire recovery, and I was particularly interested in many of the plants, like the one on the upper right called fire poppy, and below that is a species of the genus Phacelia. These are what we call pyroendemics. That means you only find them after fire. So they have dormant seeds that sit in the soil for decades or a century and then are triggered to germinate by fire. And we were very interested in trying to understand what was it about fire that caused these seeds to germinate at that particular time. And one of the things we found is that the story I had been told when I was a student, which is illustrated by the lupin there, is these seeds are stimulated by heat. The heat of the fire breaks the seed coat, and if you look on the left there, those are the seeds of a lupin, and they have very shiny, waxy covering and a very thick seed coat, and they're totally impervious to water. And it's the heat of the fire that breaks that seed coat and allows them to germinate after a fire. But what we found was most of the seeds that come up, species that come up after fire don't have these impervious seed coats. They actually can take up water, they remain dormant. And one of the things we discovered was that it was not heat in most of these species, it was chemicals from the fire itself. And this is illustrated here for 6 different species that come up after fire. And this is an experiment where we just looked at the amount of germination, and we looked at them under control conditions. In other words, doing nothing, and most all of them are dormant under controls. And then we heat treated them, which are these red bars here. And the last 4 bars are chemicals from either smoke or charred wood. What we found is the vast majority of species that come up in chaparral after fire are triggered to germinate not by the heat, but by the chemicals in smoke or the charred wood. And in fact, what we discovered that one of the chemicals in smoke was nitrogen dioxide at very small amounts, 500 parts per million. It would be enough to trigger their germination. One other thing we learned along the way is there are some species that we just couldn't get to germinate at all after fire. This is Dicentra now in the genus, I think it's Arendorfia, known as bleeding hearts, Dendromecon, which is bush poppy, and Trichostemum, or woolly blue curls. These 3 species, we could never get them to germinate until we did one thing, and that is we buried them in the soil, left them there for a year, and then supplied smoke, and then they germinated. And it wasn't the year that we waited that was important, because if we kept them at room conditions for a year, we still couldn't get them to germinate. So what it means is they actually have to be in the soil, and they have to be exposed to moisture, which very likely acts to cause the embryo to develop fully, because these species are in the Pathmaker family, which is a family known for having immature embryos at the time of dispersal. Now, my real interest, well, you can see I have 3 interests. But in chaparral, my real interest is in these 2 genera, Ceanothus, sometimes known as California lilac, on the left, and Manzanitas, which everybody recognizes from the bright red bark. These 2 genera, fascinating. They're the largest genera woody genera in chaparral. They each have around 60 species. Most of them are restricted to California. And the Manzanitas are particularly desirable in a lot of gardens simply because the bright red bark is very distinguishing. They also produce these little fruits that look like little apples. That's where it gets the name manzanita. If you've ever tried to taste one, they don't taste much like a little apple. In fact, I remember a ranger telling a campfire story once that the Indians could go for 3 days eating nothing but manzanita berries, but they could go 4 days eating nothing at all. Well, when Melanie and I first met at the Theodore Payne Foundation, and I was going to tell a story, but thank you, Lily, for telling the story. I went to the Theodore Payne Foundation because I wanted to purchase these manzanitas and ceanothus to grow in my yard, and everybody said, well, you need to go see Melanie Baer at the Theodore Payne Foundation because she's the person who can pick out the right plants for your garden. I went there, picked out maybe a couple dozen Ceanothus arctostaphylos, took them home, and as Lily pointed out, when I got home, I discovered one of them was missing. And so I called Melanie up and asked her if she still had it. She did. We had a long conversation that ended with me asking her out on a date. And to this day, I still don't remember if that was an accidental leaving the plant at the foundation or whether I did it on purpose. I really don't know the answer to that question. But we went on a date, had our first date, and I'll never forget that date because we ended the date by kissing while we were each standing on different sides of our front fence. And I always thought, well, that's got to be probably the safest kiss in the history of kissing. We combined forces because one of the things I was particularly interested in was how to identify these plants in nurseries when they gave us oftentimes just the horticultural name. And so Melanie and I together researched this question, put together a compilation in the journal Fremontia, or the journal formerly known as Fremontia. Now I believe it's Artemisia. Where we laid out the specific species that is associated with each of the varieties, or in some cases, these were hybrids, and we listed what was known about the hybrids. Sometimes we had firm data, and other times it was really more a matter of speculation. Now, the last thing I'll just end with is my focus now in Chaparral is I'm very much concerned about how to manage this vegetation that is very fire prone, and it's also adjacent to communities, and this wildland-urban interface is very problematical oftentimes when those wildfires burn into the communities. And so my focus is, well, how do we balance fire hazard reduction with resource conservation? And this is a particular problem for Chaparral because these two genera, Ceanothus and Arctostaphylos, each with about 60 species, they have some species, like this Arctostaphylos glandulosa, that will resprout after a fire. But the vast majority, 2/3 of the species, are like this Arctostaphylos glauca. They simply don't resprout, and they have to come back from seeds. Well, they have to have a certain period of time without fire in order to develop a seed bank. And so one of the big concerns when it comes to managing this vegetation is how much fire can it tolerate and still survive. And it is obvious from a number of studies that if the interval is too short between fires, you can actually eliminate these obligate seeding species from the site. And so my question now, and I've been working on this for about 5 years, is how short is too short? And we are starting to get a little bit of data on this. This is just some data from a species of Ceanothus cuneatus, Arctostaphylos viscida. And this is the seedlings relative to the pre-fire population. And in order for the population to recover, that ratio has to be at least 1, and probably much higher than 1, if you're going to sustain that population. Basically what we found is if you have stands that are 20 years of age or less, there's every likelihood that those populations are going to go extinct. And if they go extinct, what you're left with is a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, and that vacuum is generally replaced by non-native alien grasses. And this is something we've seen throughout the state over many years. We have studies going back 70 years showing that too much fire will eliminate chaparral and replace it with these exotic grasses, which is undesirable for a lot of reasons. But I'll end it there because I'm losing my voice. Thank you.
been a long night, but we wanted to present you with the Horticulturist of the Year award from both of us. Well deserved, and especially research on fire we all know so well. So, thank you very much. Thank you all of the year come up here briefly. We'll do a quick picture and then we'll let you all go. All the hotties, please. Oh, yes, she's gonna get the raffle up slide. Yeah. And then the people that have won the auction will have your names up here before everyone skedaddles. The process will be, I'm going to explain this while we get everybody gathered here. If you see your name on the board, then we will have grouped your winnings by letter. So A, B, and C are in that other room. D through Z is around the outside. You will see a bundle. Please bring the bundle to the payment, and we'll put you squared away, and then you can come back and pick up your things. Also, last call for the bar. Last call for the bar, and we will help you with the auction stuff in a minute. Also, if anybody at a table is interested in taking one of the beautiful arrangements home, it's up for grabs.
I think they are definitely that same family.